Dita excused herself and walked over to a nearby table, pouring a glass of wine for Mr. Black. Anika's breath caught in her throat as she noticed Dita sliding a powdery substance into the drink. Dita saw Anika looking at her and slowly shook her head, signaling her to remain silent. Anika sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the small cracked mirror on her dresser. Her cheeks were smeared with tears, her mascara a dark smear under her eyes. She forced herself to take deep, steadying breaths, but the dread in her chest refused to disappear. Life had been relentless. It hadn't just kicked her down. It had kicked her when she was already on the ground. Her mother's health was getting worse, and the rent was past due, and the little savings she had was now a distant memory. Anika had tried everything: odd jobs, borrowing money from friends, selling her belongings, but she was out of options. The pressure was suffocating. Dita, her childhood friend, had tried to get her into joining a line of work. Dita worked as a prostitute, and while Anika had stubbornly refused at first, the reality of her bleak situation had worn down her resistance. Tonight, she had reluctantly agreed to step into a world she had never imagined for herself. With trembling hands, Anika reapplied her makeup, wiping away the traces of her tears. How had it come to this? She had always prided herself on her principles, her dignity, but hunger and desperation were ruthless enemies. She knew deep down it wasn't about pride anymore. It was about survival. She felt a deep pang of guilt whenever she thought of her mother who had raised her with so much love and sacrifice, who had taught her to be strong and independent. Their bond was unbreakable. But Anika knew her mother would never understand this choice. The truth was a bitter pill, and so she chose a lie instead. She had told her mother she was escorting Dita somewhere, a tale to mask the harsh reality. A knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts. She quickly gathered her things, slipped on her coat, and opened the door. Dita stood there, her face softening into a sympathetic smile as she enveloped Anika into a tight hug. "It's going to be okay," Dita whispered. "You'll get used to it. We all do." Anika nodded, though her heart felt as though it was shattering with every step she took. The two friends walked out into the cold night, their hair heavy with unspoken fears and desperate hopes. As they reached the streets, Anika hesitated, a lump rising in her throat. Dita took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "This isn't who you are, Anika. It doesn't define you. You are doing what you have to do." Anika tried to believe her. She tried to drown down the self-loathing that echoed in her mind, but it clung to her like a shadow. The pavement was hard beneath her heels, each step a reminder of the path she was taking. Dita and Anika approached one of the busy streets outside one of the city's most popular nightclubs. The night was alive with music, laughter, and distant sirens, but to Anika, it all felt like a muffled blare. Her heart pounded louder with each passing minute, the reality of her situation pressing down like a weight on her chest. Dita noticed Anika's unease and gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Anika. You don't have to do much tonight. Just smile when a car pulls up and try to get noticed. It will get easier with time." Anika nodded, though her mind was crowded with doubts and fear. She had no idea how to go about this. How to transform herself into someone who could attract attention this way. The prospect seemed daunting, almost impossible. As they reached the line of women standing outside the club, Dita motioned towards two figures huddled together, chatting and giggling. "This is Xena and Abby," she said, introducing them. Xena was tall with striking red hair, while Abby was petite with bright, curious eyes. Both women smiled warmly at Anika, their faces painted with an understanding that only experience could bring. "Welcome, Anika," Xena said, her voice carrying a comforting tone. "We've all been where you are." Before Anika could respond, a car pulled up to the cape. All the women around surged forward, their movements synchronized. voices overlapping. As they called out to the driver, Anika was left standing awkwardly behind, unsure of what to do or how to compete for attention. She watched as they vied for the driver's attention. Their practiced smiles and enticing gestures, a testament to their familiarity with this dance. The driver, a middle-aged man with a tired expression, pointed to one of the girls. She strutted over, her confidence unwavering, and slipped into the passenger seat. The car drove off, leaving Anika with a sinking feeling in her stomach. Dita returned to her side, sensing her distress. It takes time, Anika. You don't have to rush. Just observe for now. See how the others do it. We are all here to help. Despite the encouragement, Anika felt a wave of despair. She hugged her arms tighter around her body, feeling more exposed than ever. Xena and Abby joined them, their presence offering a semblance of comfort. First nights are always the hardest, Abby said softly, her eyes reflecting empathy. But remember, you are not alone in this. We support each other. Their words were kind, but they did little to ease the turmoil in Anika's heart. She forced herself to smile, even as her mind screamed at her situation. How had she fallen so far? The weight of her mother's sickness, the unpaid rents, the endless worry. It all seemed so unimportant. Another car slowed as it approached, and once again, the woman moved towards it. Anika watched, her breath catching in her throat. This time, she mustered the courage to take a hesitant step forward, trying to mimic the confidence of the others. Her attempt felt clumsy, unconvincing, but it was a step nonetheless. The night was far from over, and Anika knew there would be many more like that. Each moment was a battle against her own doubts, against the harsh judgments she feared from herself more than anyone. But amid the uncertainty and fear, a tiny spark of determination flickered within her. I have to do this, she reminded herself, for Mom. And with that thought, she took another step into the unknown, hoping that somewhere along this dark path, she would find her way, or at the very least, survive this journey. Anika stood off to the side, anxiously observing as more and more women entered cars, leaving the cab one by one. Desperate to avoid going home empty-handed, she knew she had to learn quickly. The fear of disappointing her mother gnawed at her, but the raw necessity for money propelled her forward. A very tall, lanky man approached the group, his presence immediately commanding attention. He whispered something to Dita, and she glanced over at Anika before excusing herself to speak privately with him. The conversation was inaudible, filled with harsh tones and glances. After a while, Dita nodded and led the man over to Xena and Abby, where more whispered exchanges ensued. Finally, Dita asked Anika to join them. This is Slim. Dita introduced the lanky man, a sharp feature softened as he gave a slight nod in her direction. He has a job for us, Dita continued, her voice tinged with excitement. Tonight is a good night. We are going to cash out big time. Anika's mind raced. The whole situation made her feel uneasy, but a spark in Dita's eyes fueled a flicker of hope. What kind of job? She asked hesitantly. Slim smiled. I've got an exclusive party happening tonight. It's high profile, high paying clients. A couple of hours, and you will make more than you can make on the streets in a week. Anika's heart skipped a beat. The proposition sounded too good to be true. She glanced at Dita, seeking reassurance. But Dita's confidence was unwavering. It's safe, Dita said, as if reading Anika's thoughts. I've done gigs for Slim before. You just need to be charming, socialize, and maybe a bit more if the clients request more. But you control the boundaries. Xena and Abby were already nodding, agreeing without hesitation. Their ease made Anika feel slightly better, but she still couldn't shake the anxiety gnawing at her insides. Okay, she finally agreed, her voice barely more than a whisper. I will do it. Dita turned to Anika and squeezed her hand. Trust me, this is good for us. It's a big opportunity. Anika nodded, trying to calm the turmoil in her heart. Before she knew it, they were following Slim as he led them to a sleek black car. The drive through the city was quiet. Anika kept her gaze focused outside the window, the familiar streets blaring. As they sped towards an unknown destination, the car finally pulled up to a large, luxurious mansion on the outskirts of the city. As they entered, music and laughter greeted them. Slim addressed the group one last time. "Remember, these clients are high-paying. Be your charming selves and keep the clients happy. This is your shot." The party was a whirlwind of extravagance. Anika found herself mingling with people dressed in designer clothes. Their conversation topics, far removed from anything she was familiar with. Dita, Xena, and Abby blended effortlessly into the scene. Their laughter light and practiced. Anika did her best to follow suit, smiling and engaging in small talk, all the while trying to keep the sense of dread at bay. The nights had already been long and draining, and Anika was just beginning to feel a slight sense of accomplishment among the opulence and excess of the party. But her respite was short-lived as Slim approached Dita again, whispering something urgent into her ear. Dita's expression remained unreadable, but her eyes flickered over to Anika with an intensity that made her uneasy. Dita asked Xena and Abby to come over, who joined the hushed discussions. Finally, Dita called Anika over, slipping an arm around her shoulders in an attempt to offer reassurance. "There's a very rich millionaire here," Dita began, her voice low but steady. "He wants 4 girls for the night. The pay is very generous. It's time to make some serious money." Anika's heart raced, pounding in her chest as the words sank in. "Don't worry, you will be okay," Dita added, giving her shoulders a gentle squeeze. But there was something in Dita's eyes that betrayed her concern. Unsure but resolute, Anika stilled herself as they walked outside to meet the awaited clients. The night air was crisp. As they approached the vehicle, the heavy door swung open, revealing the elongated figure of the millionaire sitting inside. He was an imposing figure, around 60 years old, his dark hair meticulously groomed. Despite the late hour, he wore dark sunglasses, obscuring his eyes and adding an air of intimidation. The man's smile was broad yet sinister, giving Anika a sense of discomfort. His arm extended, asking them to come closer. "Come sit beside me," he said. His voice alone sent a chill down Anika's spine as they moved further into his limousine. As they slid into the plush leather seats of the limo, the door closed behind them with a finality that made Anika's heart beat even faster. "My name is Mr. Black," the millionaire introduced himself, a smile never reaching his eyes. He removed his sunglasses, revealing piercing cold eyes that scrutinized each of them in a manner that felt invasive. "I have a beautiful mansion waiting where we can enjoy the rest of the evening in privacy," he continued, his voice dripping with veiled intent. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, everything about him screamed danger. Anika exchanged a quick glance with Dita, who squeezed her hand tightly, as if to say, "Stay calm." Xena and Abby seemed composed, though Anika noticed the subtle tension in their postures. Trying to mask her fear, Anika forced a smile. "What precisely do you have in mind, Mr. Black?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Mr. Black chuckled, a deep, unsettling sound. "Just good company and entertainment for the night. Nothing more," he replied, though his eyes glinted with something more sinister. The limousine began to move. Anika felt the sense of entrapment tighten around her. She had vowed to do what was necessary to survive, but the depths to which she might be forced to sink were uncharted and terrifying throughout the ride. Mr. Black's gaze lingered on her more than the others, and every word he uttered felt like a calculated trap. Negotiating boundaries with clients was something Anika had been prepared for in theory, but the reality of facing someone like Mr. Black was overwhelming. As they arrived at the mansion, Anika's unease only grew. Mr. Black's mansion stood tall and imposing, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out like dark claws. Anika's feet felt leading as she hesitated at the grand entrance, an almost primal instinct. urging her to turn back. But the promise of a lucrative payout and the fear of failure anchored her steps as she followed Mr. Black inside. Mr. Black led them through several decorated rooms until they reached a plush sitting area. "Make yourselves comfortable," he instructed. "I will serve us some drinks." Anika's unease only heightened as she took a seat. Her hands trembled visibly, and despite Dita's soothing reassurances, she couldn't manage to calm herself. Xena and Abby exchanged guarded whispers before nodding subtly towards Anika. Dita approached Mr. Black and whispered something into his ear. He glanced at Anika, his cold gaze assessing her before he nodded in agreement. Returning to Anika, Dita spoke softly but firmly. "You can relax just for this time. We will take care of Mr. Black tonight." Anika's breath eased in her throat as relief washed over her. "Thank you," she whispered, genuinely grateful, yet painfully aware of her vulnerability. As Mr. Black returned with the drinks, Xena, Abby and Dita moved with practiced ease. They began to dance for him, skillfully employing their charm to draw his attention. That night unfolded slowly, paralyzed by a mix of horror and fascination, as her friends took turns kissing Mr. Black. Their movements fluent and calculated. Gradually, the night drew them towards the bed. Anika's heart pounded in her chest as she observed from a distance, her discomfort intensifying as they engaged in intimate acts with Mr. Black. Unable to tear her eyes away, she felt a profound mixture of revulsion and helplessness. As events escalated, Dita excused herself and walked over to a nearby table, pouring a glass of wine for Mr. Black. Anika's breath caught in her throat as she noticed Dita sliding a powdery substance into the drink. Dita saw Anika looking at her and slowly shook her head, signaling her to remain silent. Anika's mind raced with questions. Why would Dita drag Mr. Black? What was their plan? She felt a surge of panic, but Dita's firm gaze urged her to maintain her composure. Mr. Black was oblivious to the exchange. He was immersed in the attention of Xena and Abby. Dita returned, offering him the glass of wine with a seductive smile. He took it eagerly, gulping it down without suspicion. Minutes ticked by, and the effects of the drug began to show. Mr. Black's movements grew sluggish, his eyes losing focus. Anika could barely mask her shock as he slammed back, struggling to stay conscious. Dita's expression remained calculated and composed. "He will pass out soon," she whispered to the others. Xena nodded, understanding clear in her eyes. As Mr. Black slumped unconscious on the bed from the drugged drink, Anika cautiously approached Dita. "What's going on?" Anika asked, her voice barely a whisper, laden with anxiety. Dita took a deep breath, trying to maintain a composed exterior. "There's something we didn't tell you," she began, her tone serious and urgent. "We didn't just come here to entertain Mr. Black. Slim told us he has a huge suitcase of money hidden somewhere in this house. If we can find it, we are set for life. No more working the streets. No more nights like this." Anika's eyes widened in disbelief. "But that is stealing," she exclaimed, taking a step back. "Come on, Dita, let's not do this." Dita's face softened, her determination mingled with desperation. "Anika, I'm tired of this life," she admitted, her voice cracking. "If we find this money, I can move to another country and start afresh. You can move with your mother too. Think about it. Taking her to the best hospitals outside the country, giving her the care she deserves. You wouldn't have to sell your body to survive. This is our escape from this miserable existence." Anika's heart ached at the thought of a better life for her and her mother. But the wrongness of the act gnawed at her conscience. "Dita, this isn't the way. There has to be another way. Whether you join us in searching for the money or not, we are still going to do it," Dita said resolutely. She turned to Xena and Abby, who immediately started rifling through drawers and searching every corner of Mr. Black's bedroom. Anika stood frozen, torn between the moral high ground and the dream of a better future. She glanced around the lavish room, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. They were isolated in an unfamiliar part of town, with no nearby houses. The limousine that had brought them here was long gone, and there was no network signal on her cell phone for her to call an Uber to ask for help. She was stuck. Think about it, Anika, Dita urged as she overturned a box on a side table. This is our one shot, our one chance to break free. Anika's mind raced. The thought of getting caught terrified her, but the image of her mother suffering because of her inaction was unbearable. She could do nothing and remained trapped in a life of hardship, or she could take a risk, however morally dubious, for the potential of a brighter future. With trembling hands, she made a decision. Okay, she said softly, almost to herself. Then louder, okay, I will help. Dita looked up, relief flooding her features. Thank you, Anika. We can do this, I promise. The search began in earnest. The four women combing through the bedroom. Anika's heart pounded as she opened wardrobes and scanned the undersides of luxurious furniture. As minutes turned into what felt like hours, frustration and fear built. Suddenly, Xena's voice broke the tense silence. I think I found something, she called out, pulling out a hidden panel in the back of a closet. I found it, she exclaimed, but something caught her eye. Abby was standing in front of a small cupboard, her face ashen, her entire body frozen with dread. Girls, come and see this. Abby's voice was barely above a whisper. Dita and Xena's smile faltered as they walked over to her. Curiosity itched on their faces. Abby reached into the cupboard and pulled out a worn familiar bag. This is Nadu's bag and dress. What is it doing here? Confused, Anika asked. Who is Nadu? She is Abby's cousin, Dita explained. Her voice strained. She has been missing for 4 months now. She used to work on the streets with us. She went out with a customer one day and never came back. Xena, her face pale, reached deeper into the cupboard and retrieved a dress. This is my dress, she said quietly. I loaned it to Peach. She is another girl who went missing just last month. Dita stepped forward, her hands trembling as she opened the cupboard door wider. Inside, they saw a chilling array of female bags and clothes, dozens of them. The sight was profoundly disturbing. What was this man doing with all these bags and clothes? Dita whispered, her voice barely steady. Their collective aura deepened as they processed the grim implication. Mr. Black wasn't just an affluent, powerful man. It was something far more sinister. Anika's eyes darted to the bed, where Mr. Black had been lying unconscious moments ago. A chill ran down her spine as she saw it was now empty. He's gone, she warned, her voice rising in panic. Fear gripped them. Dita snapped into action. We need to get out of here now, Dita shouted. Panic surged as they realized the front door was locked.